Answer that question will then determine how, as Muslims, we should approach the problem. If it is a public opinion and people actually feel threatened, then as Muslims we have a responsibility to address that threat. If it's just a public policy that's only to serve the government, then maybe we should just lobby and talk to government officials because the public doesn't reflect that. So I don't know which panelists could answer that question.
Very good question in terms of public opinion. With the controversy surrounding Bill 94, which happened in, what, 2 years ago? Yeah, 3 years ago, there was a public opinion study conducted, which found that I believe it was 81% of Canadians were in favor of a ban. And this is 81% of Canadians, not of Quebecers, but of Canadians. So that is sort of an alarming number. In my opinion, I would have to guess that has a lot to do with not being educated about the niqab. Because quite frankly, for somebody to encounter somebody who has part of their face covered, it would be something that causes discomfort. What this government is doing is legislating on the discomfort of people. So, you know, for example, I may find tattoos make me uncomfortable. We can't legislate on my discomfort. We can't legislate on things that people are not educated about, and we don't take those grand steps, because what we are doing, in fact, is limiting the civil liberties of people who have a sincerely held belief that it is part of their religious tradition. So public opinion, you're right, it does feed into it, but I think with this recent decision, I don't think Minister Kenney really is playing into what the vast majority of Canadians think. I think he's playing into a particular type of agenda, which God only knows what's going to happen in the next 3.5 years.
That's another message that I'd like to leave for today. Like the first one I said is let's all stand together in face of injustice. Now the second message is you have to use your critical mind when you open up the media and when you hear the radio and when you open up the newspapers and read articles. You have to use your critical mind, your critical thinking, question what you're reading. Now, the reason why 80-something% of Canadians would be in favor of ban is because the only source of information that they get about niqab, about religion in general, is the media. So whatever media says about niqab, then we all agree on that. So when we put a poll at the end of the page, yes, 85% of the people are going to agree. That's why these kind of events like today, that's why it's very, very important to create awareness. And ever since the bill 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago until today, I have taken, I participated in many events like today, and people always came up to me, not like 100% of them, but the bigger majority of people, they came up to me to thank me because they never ever thought that, you know, wearing niqab meant so-and-so, or that you can be a niqabi and educated, or that you can be a niqabi and you can work, and etc., etc. So I took part in an event called the Human Library, and that was organized by the Kitchener Public Library, where we were like books, and then if you checked us out, then we can have a one-on-one conversation. So people, I've spoken to many people, lots of people check out myself as a book, and they have lots of questions, right? And really, I mean, I'm so happy to take these questions and answer them, but at the end of the day, it just shows me how much people are so good in the inside, but they really do not know what this is about. And their only sources of information is the media, and the media, we know it's biased. So that's why having, you know, events like today, creating awareness among the youth is very, very, very important to change around these numbers and to change around the policies and the opinions, etc.
Sorry, I was just going to add on to that. I don't know if I'm going to be like paraphrasing here, but I do, obviously, the public opinion, the government is using the public opinion to their advantage when deciding what the public policies are in terms of this issue. But it is, as these two have mentioned, that it is lack of education. It is we absorb and we retain everything that the media feeds to us and everything that is, you know, the stereotypes and everything. I was actually, me and Fatima went out for lunch a couple of days ago, and we were discussing this issue, and a man came up to us, he approached us, and he was like, I want to know what's, like, I mean, I'm hearing your conversation right now, but I don't know anything about the niqab. I know that, like, women, you know, they cover their face and they refuse to let anyone see them or talk to them, and they're very antisocial. And I guess this goes along with what you're saying. As Muslims, it is our responsibility, it is our duty to inform people. I mean, we can't just point fingers at the media or at whatever source these people are getting their information from and, you know, pretend it's all their fault. It is our responsibility. It is part of our fault. If we want people to be educated about what niqab is, what anything Islamic, we need to inform them. Like we need to get out there. And this man, he was, after our conversation, he was like, "Wow, I knew nothing about. I was totally, completely blinded about everything you just said to me. I've never heard it." And so I think as a Muslim community, we need to focus on that. That's something that we should all keep in mind.
Right. Any other questions? I have a question as well. It's kind of, pardon? Oh, all right, you go first then. Yeah, for sure.
Alright, so I see all four of you are advocating for the cup, right?
No, now you're mischaracterizing what we're doing.
So you're not for the cup?
That's not what we're discussing. That's not the issue. All right.
Again, yeah, that was on the principle of the freedom to choose. My question is that, you know, when in Canada, there was one thing that I really, really liked here, and it made life interesting. It was the fact that you would meet people from so many different places, from so many different cultures, and they would have good perspectives. They would have their own way of everything, you know, dressing, talking, you know, their own view of life, which made life so much rich. It was like a mini tour of the world, and that's what I really liked before. What I'm seeing right now, and I don't know how to do it because it's not really a straight up question. But what I'm seeing right now is we're moving towards not celebrating the differences as to how it makes everything so much more rich, but moving towards an idea that we need to form a similar way of thinking, a similar way of dressing and talking, and you know, you go buy this jeans from this brand and all that stuff coming into play. How do you think we can tackle this and kind of revive that thought that, you know, what do I do every single day? Any answer to this question that, you know, how do I bring back that acknowledgement of differences? And that's a good thing. The fact that you bring a different perspective, it's a good thing. I like that.
I think your question's pretty loaded. You're asking how to make the world a better place.
Pretty much.
On a small scale, I think that, you know, a big way to contribute would be educating people on difference not being bad. Prior to all the sort of niqab hoopla, people didn't really know niqabis, nor did they have much of an opinion. They may see a niqabi, they might spot somebody here or there, but there wasn't a concerted effort to just pretty much have them disengaged from our world. And I think we've moved into this sort of, and I'm going to call it a bigoted view, you can disagree with me, but we've moved away from that, and I think it has a lot to do with the people who run our country, quite unfortunately, and the people that they themselves will kowtow to. And unfortunately, it is very much normalized to have a particular perception of Muslims. And I think we as a community have failed at educating others because in many ways, this is a discussion that we should be having for many generations, but it doesn't look like we're actually having those conversations that we need to have. There's a lot of internal work that we need to do. And I see all this sort of happen when there's a moment of crises, but I don't see any work really being put in when we're in happy times, right? Yeah. So 9/11 hit and we were all had a target on our head, and then you have all these masjid meetings about, oh, how are we going to deal with this? And then everything sort of dissipates. And then things calm down and then something else happens. So I think that's one way, internal to the community, we can deal with it, and external, we can educate people that we're not scary, that, our sister with a niqab here has a mouth and a voice, and she speaks, and she's very eloquent when she does so. I think those are the types of perceptions that we have to combat, because I think that is predominantly what dominates the discourse.
How can we say for Many times when I walk, when I'm shopping, people can shout at me and say, go home. So again, it's education, because they cannot imagine how you can be like Canadian and at the same time Muslim, and which makes it even worse, and a Pope, right? Like the combination, it's very difficult for them to, you know, bring it all together. So the key is education. I mean, it's like people are telling me that you have to dress in a certain way, look in a certain way, and speak in a certain way to be Canadian. And if it's not that way, then you can't be Canadian. That's the message now. So it's education. That's the magic word.
And I also think that not education just in the realm of, you know, me and you have a discussion, a talk, and, you know, we'll settle our differences, but we should all study, like we should educate ourselves politically speaking as well. Like we should all know our constitution. We should all know how we are equal in this country and what brought us here. And when something goes wrong, we should be able to pull this out and stand in solidarity with one another and be like, no, like we have the same rights. It says so right here, written in documentation, that she's no better than me and I'm no better than her. And we're gonna stand together, whether you're Muslim or not. We are humans, we are citizens of this country, and this is the way it is.
I think also the most important thing, which is adding on to what you're all saying, is deconstructing the stereotypes that are popular in our society. But we have to ask first where these stereotypes come from. And like I learned in Jasmine's science class, which I definitely recommend anybody takes, is that like we have these constructed stereotypes of all of these minorities, and a big part of the issue is that we're trying to construct the stereotypes so that we can see the differences as a bad thing, and we can see it as, well, because like Muslims are terrorists, or because like whatever other stereotype you want to use, then we have to like follow these normative values in our cultures and in our societies so that we can avoid all of these issues. But once we begin to deconstruct these stereotypes, we're able to understand and embrace the differences. And an assignment that I did in science class actually was on the show Little Mosque on the Prairie. And at first I was like, this show is ridiculous, like all it does is reconstruct the stereotypes of Muslims. And like I took it to Dr. Zain and I was like, I don't know what to do, like this show doesn't do anything for me, like I don't understand what it does, it's the opposite of what my research is. And she told me to look at it more critically. And I realized that the entire point of the show was, for being able to deconstruct something, you have to like often reconstruct it. So in order to deconstruct the stereotype of like the like crazy brown Muslim man, you have to show him as like a crazy brown Muslim man, and then show the details within it to show that he's not so crazy. He's protective over his daughter. You won't really understand what I'm talking about unless you've seen the show, I guess. But like to be able to deconstruct some of the stereotypes that are like avid in our society is one way to definitely show that the differences between us aren't really that bad.
Just one last thing to add to that. No, I don't like the sound of my own voice, but it's just something that came up. Two things actually. First being, us Muslims quite unfortunately don't vote. But when something goes wrong, we all stand up and we're, you know, grumpy and we're moaning about the situation we're in. And I can't stress that enough. Most of the Muslim population does not vote. And I know this from firsthand experience. I poll, I knock on doors, I try to pull people out on election day, and it's, you know what, it's like swimming against the tide. It's next to impossible, and it's quite unfortunate. And then this is where we end up with people in power that we can't really respect, I guess, in many ways. And the second thing is, we're not the only community that's dealing with issues like this. Now, we might be a community that's got it on many fronts, but I mean, there are a lot of ways in which we can stand with other communities in solidarity. And we've seen this when you had read us the letter from the United Church, and they also spoke in solidarity. How did that relationship come about? Well, it doesn't come about because, you know, they are good-hearted people and they decided to speak out against an injustice. But there has to be bridges that are built between communities. And I mean any communities. You know, it wasn't that long ago that colored people were not welcome. If we were here about 50 years ago, I don't think any of us would be here. Most of us would not be here. Because that was segregation, that was racism in this country. So we have to remember that there are others aside from us, and we should always keep them in mind.
Any other questions? guess it was everybody. It was a great event, and obviously the reason for this event was to bring everybody together for a discussion. It's not anything of, it's not a debate, it's not an opinion, it's just the fact that they live here, you live here, you talk to them, everybody should talk to each other about whatever they're thinking, so that, what my neighbor or my friend is feeling, I don't hear it from a third source and, just decide on everything. I should actually speak to the person as well. And I thank you everybody for coming here, and I'm hoping this is like a starting point where you can then talk to different people about different things, talk to them about what this means to them, and open up your own horizons for communication. And we hope that everybody take away some new insight, whether your opinions change or not. Obviously, the purpose of this event was to shed light on the other side, on the side of the Muslim movement. And I hope everybody contemplates this issue further, and before they form their own opinions. In the end, I'd like to thank all the panelists, of course, for their wonderful insights and unique perspectives. So please, round of applause. And obviously, we'd also like to thank Chris Klassen and Evelyn Escato from the Religion and Culture Department for making this event possible. And finally, of course, to everybody here for showing up and, absorbing and trying to contemplate on what everything is. So that's for us and me. All right, thank you very much. Good to know everybody. There was one other announcement. I totally forgot about this. While this was happening, we decided to pull out the forum where you can actually talk to your the Canadian government about this issue. So if you actually do want to raise awareness about this and put on your stamp on that, I heard this message and I want to say something about it. We have a laptop there. It has a preconditioned form on it. You can type in your email and name and a short message, and we reach the individuals that should be concerned about this before the registration. The laptop is right there. Please do take your time to sign.